Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro Adventures. And at the end of another week, in the end of another poll, we've got a very definite win for Imago for Shadowrun. The Scottish adventure, as sometimes it's referred to. Now, as usual, I'll cover that on the desktop in just a wee second. And I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related stuff and some other poll-related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been reliably informed have the kindest hearts in the entire world. And I am very much inclined to believe that, because they are kind enough to help the channel out. Now, if you'd like to join them and help the channel out, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to become a real honest-to-goodness fake Laird of Scotland, or one of the other offers that we've got, then there's Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'll be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Imago. So, this is Imago. It's an adventure for Shadowrun. It's by FASA Publishing. It's written by Carl Sargent, which I'll come to in a moment. And it was released in 1992, not 2002, as I accidentally wrote in the poll. I think I got kind of mixed up with the dates from the Adventure for Spycraft I also put in the poll, which came out in 2002. Now, this came out a decade earlier, 1992, which puts it firmly into Shadowrun's second edition era. Now, it's an adventure set in Scotland, which I was kind of expecting to be pretty terrible, because the American view of Scotland tends to be very cliched. And that's what I kind of expected Shadowrun to do, because their Irish sourcebook, the Tir na Nog book, isn't great. But this isn't too bad at all, probably because it's written by Carl Sargent. Now, Carl Sargent is a British writer. He was born in Monmouthshire in Wales, and is responsible for a whole load of great stuff. He wrote a lot for Dungeons & Dragons, but he's responsible for some of the most fantastic stuff for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Things I've covered on the channel before. Lots of great books that he did. A fantastic writer, who unfortunately was taken from us in 2018. He died a few years ago. But this is a great adventure, but doesn't quite get Scotland. Perhaps that's because of some hindsight, though. Because of things like part of the adventure is set on the Isle of Skye, and it mentions different ways to get there, but it doesn't mention the Skye Bridge. As I said, this was released in 1992, and the Skye Bridge didn't enter planning until 1992, although it opened in 1995. There was maybe some information about it which you could have picked up on, but it wasn't that common. You know, we didn't really have the internet. So he never predicted, even just a few years in the future, never mind 70 years in the future that he was writing about. Anyway, let's have a look at the back cover first of all. Imago, Great Britain awaits. There's bound to be trouble when Seattle-based Shadowrunners are imported to take care of business in the United Kingdom. A valuable employee of one of Britain's largest megacorporations may be missing, and Transys Neuronet will be damned if they're going to let anyone on their side of the pond know about it. The search takes the runners through Scotland, the city of Edinburgh, and to darker corners of the Matrix than they ever dreamed existed. It's a complex puzzle of betrayal, friendship, isolation, hatred, blinding love, vengeance, and the most bizarre twist of all, life after death. Imago is an adventure for Shadowrun, features high-level dealings with the realms of magic and the Matrix, separately and in unique combination. The London Sourcebook, Virtual Realities, and the Grimoire are highly recommended for play, but not required. Imago has been designed for use with Shadowrun's second edition, but can be used with first edition rules. Now, that kind of details what it is. The players are hired from their ordinary Seattle stomping grounds to go to Scotland. It doesn't actually deal with any other parts of Great Britain. It's all in Scotland. And they are looking for a missing employee, Decker. And they have to search. He's basically been murdered, so it turns into a murder mystery where they're searching for him. But that's not obviously clear, because he's set up a lot of things. His cyberdeck is accessing the Matrix and sending messages and things. So they are following a trail that he's left as well. So it looks like a kidnapping for a while, although he's dead before the start of play. Now, the artwork and print quality is absolutely lovely, as FASA did at this time. And we start off with the usual story. You know, setting up the scene, the introduction, going through for the Games Master. Various notes, what rules to be used, how to use the book, the plot synopsis, exactly what's happened, and then the start. So the players get hired. They fly over to America. They fly over from America, sorry, straight to Scotland. Welcome to Bonnie, Scotland. And it talks about the differences and the fact that firearms, for example, aren't common in Britain, so they're not going to get their guns through customs. And there's lots of information as they speak to people. They're looking for quicksilver. One of the things I'm amused by is various things which seem almost right. There's a mention of going into a bar at one scene and seeing two trolls ordering a pint of heavy. Now, that kind of is something you would hear in Scotland, but it's way less popular now. But it's obviously something Carl Sargent was aware of, which is very different to anywhere else. You wouldn't really go into a pub in London and order heavy, for example. Getting past the bureaucrats, the Cameron connection, quicksilver, finding out information. There's the Hamish's bar section, where, as I said, they go to a bar. Pint of heavy, is it? He half snarls at you. Great, thanks, you reply, trying to hide your accents and the fact that you have no idea what you just ordered. Yeah, kind of makes sense, the difference between Scotland and anywhere else. We do have our own unique things, even what we call different types of beer. So we've got Hamish MacLeod, Duncan the Fixer, different characters having to raise money and get access to resources, like being able to get access to weapons and vehicles. We've got the Matrix section, so your decker can start doing some research. We've got various pieces of information, so getting access to medical insurance, because you've got your dog wagon contract, but does that work in the UK? Driving licenses, weapon permits, talismongers, changing your money from new yen to pounds. Getting vehicles, there's a huge section on this, because you're going to be travelling around Scotland. Far beyond public transport and walking distances. Prime Scotch beef. The halls of Academy, where they continue researching. Death in Queen Street, where they find out about the death. Now, one of the things I find quite interesting is Alistair Cameron's flat. While it's not too bad for a layout of a flat in Scotland, I find it slightly odd. Firstly, that you've got a balcony. Balconies are very rare in Scotland. Houses built here did not intend climate change and did not intend it to be warm, because we are a cold and rainy country. So a balcony is very, very uncommon. And fire escapes on the outside of the building are extremely rare. I think I have never seen one in the entirety of my time in Scotland. Perhaps ones from the highest levels of tower blocks in the middle of the cities. And also a lumber room. I had no idea what a lumber room was. I had to look it up. And it's a room for storing excess furniture. This makes this flat a weird combination of the old and the new. But anyway, it's not terrible. It just seems to be a bit Americanized with a balcony and a fire escape. Over the seas to sky, so it mentions travelling over, you know, you're going to be able to get a short flight. If you take a vehicle, then you're going to go over a ferry, etc. The weird science, where they are researching various stuff. You're going back to Edinburgh. And we end up at Loch Ness, because, rather weirdly, the Loch Ness Monster is part of this. Now, of course, Shadowrun has magic returning and various supernatural beings appearing. So things like the Sasquatch and all that in North America, which are legendary animals in our real world, are real in the world of Shadowrun. So there's no reason for the Loch Ness Monster to not be real. But it does seem a bit amusing to a Scottish point of view, because nobody locally believes in it. It's all just a thing to get people to visit Loch Ness. We're more than happy to sell you stuffed toys. Nessie, a gigantic freshwater serpent. I wonder if they actually meant that it's the real Loch Ness Monster that's legendary, or just a creature that's awoken and everybody went, oh, it's Nessie. Dr. Knox's body shop, where they're tracking down more information. We've got background information on Morag MacDonald. Castle Leyden, which is a modern castle built in Glencoe, which is a lovely part of the world. I've taken my kids there. It's absolutely gorgeous. The idea that somebody would build a new castle there seems a bit odd, though. A castle with a garage. I've mentioned on the channel before that Scottish castles aren't really castles anyway. They are just big houses. So I don't know whether they mean it to be that. We've got samurai strike, so various corporate operatives attack. Bringing the child home, so they find Imago, which is the kind of spirit in the Matrix of Quicksilver, and they bring him home. Squaring the circle, talking to the laird to complete the adventure, finding out all the pieces of information, setting it free from its imprisonment. We've got Spirits of Glencoe, and then we've got the final picking up the pieces. Now, one of the points I also have to bring up is, after spending 6 months in remand, if they are accused of killing Alistair Cameron, the UK court system hands down a not proven verdict. Now, not proven is one of the fantastic things in Scottish law. Under most legal systems, you are guilty or innocent. Whereas under Scottish law, you are guilty, or not proven. And not guilty and not proven both equal innocent. You do no time in jail for them. However, under Scottish law, if you're found not proven, while you are innocent of the crime and you're not going to go to jail, it's kind of an admission that we're pretty sure you did the crime, but there's not enough evidence that you did do it. And I absolutely love that in Scottish law, that we can find people that there's just not enough evidence against them. And it lets everybody know the truth. Unfortunately, the Scottish government in the past few months has decided that that's far too complex, even though it's been in Scottish law for centuries, and have decided to remove it. So we're losing the not proven verdict. But I thought it was worth mentioning because it is mentioned in here. So the players do some time if they're found, if they killed somebody, the police can't prove it, so they are eventually released, not to return to Britain. We've got the usual legwork sections where players can do background checks and research. We've got the various NPCs, the cast of shadows, including Quicksilver himself. United Kingdom facts at your fingertips. Scotland, Edinburgh facts at brief. The clan murders based on ancient feud. As if anybody in Scotland really cares about their clans anymore. That's something that foreigners far more care about. Board changes in powerful UK corporation by Carl Sargent, apparently. Tom Dowd. They're using the various writers of Shadowrun as journalists reporting on the various things here. Got a map of the centre of Edinburgh, which is, as far as I can see, fairly accurate. I located a place I went to a Star Trek convention once. And a map of Scotland. A very map of the Highlands of Scotland, because basically, while I live in Scotland, I live just off the bottom of the map here, because the border's not down to way off the page. I live just here, looking out on the Isle of Arran, which is called Scotland in miniature. But anyway, I would have preferred them to have more. We've got the player's version of the map, so not all the details on there. And some more information on weapons which can be imported and that kind of thing. Some words. A boot. Big baggets. Yukani. Denaken. Gan. Heed. Marcel. Sassenach. That's one that doesn't get used very much. It was very much in use in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Not actually any Scots words in there at all. Just various English words which we misuse, or we've changed because of our dialect. But Scots is a completely different language, and we do have our own words, which we use quite often. But anyway, Imago's a very interesting adventure, written by an awesome author. It does kind of get Scotland too close enough for a foreigner. If you're a Scotsman, you're going to notice that there's various problems in it. But if you don't live in Scotland, you're not going to notice those. It does give enough of the Scottish tone to be accurate enough. So that was Imago, and that won the poll this week with some 36% of the vote, way ahead of everything else. Because in second place was Secrets for Call of Cthulhu, which came in on 26%. A very good showing, as Call of Cthulhu often does. In third place on 18% was Dying of the Light for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, an absolutely brilliant campaign/adventure that I've run from Hogshead when they were controlling the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay license. In fourth place was Gentleman's Agreement for Spycraft. And in final place, with only 7% of the vote, was The Fiery Trial for the Babylon 5 role-playing game, which I'm kind of saddened by, because this is an adventure I'm not that familiar with. All my Babylon 5 stuff was gifted to me a few years ago, so I haven't really read through it in that much detail. And the way they wrote up this adventure, that it was a season-long arc, rather than a campaign or an adventure, much like the television show did itself, would have been interesting to have a look through and see how they achieved this, how they wove it into other adventures. But alas, not this time. We'll get around to it in the distant future. Anyway, as usual, they're all wiped out, and we've got a retro RPG poll. Now, I can't promise all new stuff. As I've said in the past, we're starting to get through my collection. Most of the things which are different and interesting have at least been in one poll by now, even if they weren't successful. So, something new to start off with is Rift's Book 12, A Skyscape. Now, this is one of their alternate universes, which you can access through the rifts of the game. Second up, we've got the World of Warhammer book. Now, this isn't a Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay book. This is a gazetteer, an atlas to the World of Warhammer. The original one, not the Age of Sigmar version, so it'll be interesting to have a look through that, because it covers an updated world beyond where Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay ended, and that Warhammer Fantasy Battle had continued to evolve the world. After that, we've got Hidden Agendas for Aeon Trinity role-playing game. Now, Trinity I've covered a couple of times. It's an interesting game which was very different from much else that White Wolf did, so it'll be interesting to have a look through that book. Then we've got the Soviet Vehicle Guide for Twilight 2000. Now, I've covered a couple of the equipment books before, but these are lore-heavy, lots of diagrams, lots of stats, books for Twilight 2000. Absolutely great for building up military forces that the players will face off against. And finally, we've got The Last Crusaders for Deadlands, Hell on Earth. Now, these are for the paladin-type characters, the magical knights who are trying to preserve order in the post-Holocaust future of Deadlands, Hell on Earth. I really like that setting, so it'd be fun to cover. But it's now in your hands. Another channel-related stuff, well, I haven't really published much in the last week. I've been writing on a role-playing game, which I hope to cover next week, because it's coming together. There's only a few bits to finish. And I'll talk about that when I get around to it. The website, rpggamer.org, this week there's been not a lot going on it. I decided to take a break after finishing The Mandalorian, and now I'm moving on to the Vader comics. So I'm working through the few issues I've missed of that. I think there's 4 or maybe even 5 issues I've skipped in the last few months, and I'll be going through, reviewing those, and statting out anything new coming from those. The Discord's been pretty quiet. There's been some chat about role-playing games and writing in there, so if you're interested in that, then pop in, join the conversation. We'd love to see you there. And finally, this Friday I was going to do another Satanic Panic video, but I've had to not do that because I was going to do it on a movie. The Tom Hanks one, Mazes and Monsters. I was going to comment on the Satanic Panic version coming off that and how the film is just kind of odd and kind of funny. But I've received a copyright strike for using clips from the trailer for the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves movie. And I'm fighting that, so before I go on to using clips from anything else, I want to see how that works out, whether it works out in favour of the channel, or whether I'm best to never use clips from anything again. But it'd be fun to do that Tom Hanks movie, because it's very, very silly. And I think there's some interesting points to be made in just how they don't get role-playing at all. But, as I said, I'm going to hold off that. So this Friday I'll be doing another retro magazines, because I've got a big pile of magazines to cover, so I'll just pick up another one of those and cover that this week. And we'll see how it works out. The interesting point to the copyright strike story, though, is that as the person who's been copyright struck, I receive a lot of information to help me fight it if I want. And Paramount Pictures, who owns Dungeons & Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, has marked my video as containing a clip out of one they've uploaded. And what amused the hell out of me is the version of the movie they've uploaded to check for copyright strikes is obviously downloaded from a pirate website, as it says it's a cam version in the description. So they've found a pirate site, they've downloaded the camcorder version, and then they're searching for anybody uploading parts of that to YouTube. I found that kind of shocking that they don't even have a real copy to upload to check for copyright strikes. They don't have to make it accessible, they don't even have to make it for sale. They can keep it hidden while using YouTube's automatic copyright detection system, but they never did that. Paramount Pictures themselves had to download a pirate copy of their own movie to copyright strike me, and I'm guessing a bunch of other people. Amused me. Let's see how it works out in the future. But anyway, as usual, I've whittled on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.